Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to my session this early. Today, we'll talk about monitoring, about enterprise network monitoring with ThousandEyes. This is a beginner session, so I have the assumption that a lot of you guys don't know much about ThousandEyes yet, but are here to learn more about it. My name is Primoz Sečnik-Kolman. I'm a global technical solutions architect at ThousandEyes. And just to establish some credentials, I've been with ThousandEyes for almost 8 years now. I've joined when it was a really, really small company before we were acquired by Cisco. My background is actually in software development and also computer networks. And that's me when I was a bit younger on my first computer. Actually, when I got this computer, I was much younger. Do you guys know what it is? Commodore, yes. There's also a ZX Spectrum just under the table, but we all know that was a way worse machine than the Commodore, right? Anyway, it's early, so let's start with something exciting. I want you to kind of wake up a little bit. It's a beginner session, so I have assumption you don't know a whole lot about ThousandEyes. I would like to invite you to just use your mobile phones, take a snapshot of this QR code, and just with a single or maybe 2 words describe what comes to your mind when you hear ThousandEyes. I would just like to understand whether and what kind of knowledge you have about ThousandEyes. So I'll give you about a minute. Just take a picture, put in a word, 2, 3. Security, okay, that's interesting. Anything else? Monitoring, oversight. Okay, monitoring is definitely coming on top. That's because it's in the title of the session, right? Visibility, excellent. What else do we have? Performance monitoring, yes. Spyware, okay. Somebody was not happy with our endpoint agent. Who was that? No, I'm joking. I don't care. I hope I'll at least, Okay, that's good. So what I see from here, from that is basically you guys have a pretty good idea what ThousandEyes is. We're not really security, as you will hear, but yes, we're monitoring visibility, performance monitoring, troubleshooting, network visibility. Proof it's not a network. Yes, somebody has our T-shirt here. Excellent. Okay, so you guys had a pretty good idea why you're here, but hopefully you will learn more, and in the end of this session you will also understand why you actually want to have ThousandEyes. So here's the agenda for today. We have about an hour. We'll have some Q&A time in the end if you have any questions. You also have applications on your phone. You can join our chat. If you have any pending questions during the presentation, one of my colleagues is actually there and he can answer the questions right away. Otherwise, we'll do that in the end. So we'll do a short introduction. We'll start with a demo. I always think, you should present ThousandEyes with a demo. Otherwise, I can put in 10 slides and it's all kind of abstract. And then we'll continue with customer digital experience. We'll do a demo. Workforce digital experience, we'll do a demo. Enterprise digital experience, we'll do another demo. So we'll do a bunch of demos so you guys can see ThousandEyes in action to understand what the added value of ThousandEyes actually is. And in the end, a couple of slides if you want more information on ThousandEyes. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. Question. So a lot of nations and generations have this thing called, what were you doing when something special happened, right? When you go to US, you're like, hey, what were you doing when 9/11 happened? And everybody knows that. Everybody knows what they were doing on that day. I don't actually think we have such a day in Europe, that would kind of unite all the people in Europe knowing what they were doing on that day, which is probably good, because usually bad things happen, and you remember that. Yeah, well, honestly, we don't really have a whole lot of things that would kind of unite us in Europe. I think probably the only thing is Eurovision Song Contest. That's the only thing that's bringing Europe together, and everybody knows what's happening. But in this group in here, I think a lot of you actually know what you were doing 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday morning. It was January 25th, around 8:10 Central European time. Do you guys know what happened then? Yeah, there was a huge outage, right? There was a huge outage, and it happened in Microsoft's network. So let's start with just looking at how ThousandEyes has seen that outage. I'm sure a lot of you guys started to get calls, you started to get emails. Well, not if your email is hosted in Outlook. You probably haven't got any Teams messages either. But for a moment, there was as always, when something big happens, there's a huge confusion, and you're trying to figure out what's actually happening, why are your users affected, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'll show you first is one of the ThousandEyes functionalities called the Internet Insights. Internet Insights is what we call collective intelligence. Basically, Internet Insights is aggregating data from all the tests that ThousandEyes performs for all the customers, and it gives you this really, really, really high-level insight into the state of popular cloud applications and popular networks, transit networks, etc. So this is, if you would have Internet Insights 2 weeks ago, when things started to happen, you would log into Internet Insights, and just before the outage actually happened, that was at 7:05 UTC, you would see that. On the left side, you have a number of different countries, and on the right side, you have Microsoft online services. For instance, I'll do that by application. I can also group that instead of by the country. I can actually group that by location. Yeah, okay, there were some problems from South Dakota, US, and some problems from England, but in general, things were working pretty good, right? And then what happened just 5 minutes later, this timeline shows you a lot of application outages started to happen. It started to happen around 7:10 UTC. It really lasted about 2 hours or so, but there were echoes of that outage that were going on for another 5 hours, as you can see. So what happened just 5 minutes later? And let's look at it now. Now, all of a sudden, from pretty much all the countries on the left side, there were outages towards a large number of services that are hosted in Microsoft's Azure cloud. So it's Microsoft Office 365, SharePoint, Teams, Microsoft services, and there's more, right? I can click next, destinations, and there are things such as SAP, I think Slack was down later on, etc. So a bunch of services were affected. What I'm trying to say here is, if you'd have Internet Insights, you look into that, it takes you 2, 3, 4 minutes to figure out this is a global Microsoft outage from all locations around the world, and that really there is nothing you can do about it, but at least you have the information to kind of, tell to your users, okay, look guys, I don't need to troubleshoot my network. I know what's going on, we'll just need to wait for Microsoft to figure it out. Okay, so I asked you what ThousandEyes is. You will hear a lot of different acronyms when people are trying to categorize what ThousandEyes is. We like to say that we are a digital experience monitoring, DM, solution. You will also hear that we provide visibility. I've seen that in Slido as well, especially when we're talking about Cisco SASE. There's this word called visibility. You will hear the word observability quite a lot as well, especially if you are deploying ThousandEyes together with, for instance, AppDynamics in the Cisco full stack observability solution. According to Gartner, forget about that. According to me, look, potato. It doesn't really matter. ThousandEyes is a very diverse tool. It can cover a lot of different scenarios, and we'll go through some of these scenarios today. I don't care how you call it. I don't care how you categorize it. The only thing I want you to kind of understand when you leave here today is like, okay, you will see the value in it, you will understand how it can help you in your specific environment, and you will understand why do you need it. So why do you need digital experience monitoring at all? I like to say that digital experience monitoring is a little bit like prescription glasses. I also have glasses, I have contact lenses. And I remember, back then when I was younger, I did not have glasses. And at some point, I was walking down the street, and on the other side of the street, someone was like, and I'm like, I don't know who that guy is, right? I could not recognize people across the street anymore. So at some point, you're still like, you're kind of denying yourself. You're like, no, I'm good. And then you're like, no, I need glasses. I cannot live without glasses anymore. You get glasses, you look around, the world is suddenly all different. And you're like, okay, I do not understand how I could actually wait for so long without the glasses. And it's very similar with digital experience monitoring. When you don't have it, you feel like, well, OK, that's something out there. I need the network, I need security monitoring. Yeah, I have some monitoring tools. Not sure why I need it. Then when you get to problems such as one I've described, and we'll see others, you're like, oh, well, but this ThousandEyes thing is actually pretty good. And after you use it for a year, you're like, well, I have no idea how I could live without ThousandEyes, right? Because it just helps me understand the problems so much. The real reason why you need that is all of us here work for the same guy. It's an employee somewhere in one company. Either it's your company or your partner's company, and the employees, what they want is they want to have flawless, excellent access to business-critical applications at all time, right? And we are the guys that deliver that in one way or another. How do those employees respond to that? Yeah, usually they don't really thank us. Usually they only find us when they have problems. The internet is not working. Office 365 is not working. Teams is not working. A WebEx video is choppy. And when that happens, you need to figure out why, right? You have many tools for that, but let's think about it. I'm sure you all have tools that show you CPU usage on all your routers, packet discards on all your switches. Great, but when users actually complain, they don't say, hey, you know what, I have some discards on my local switch. No, they say Office 365 is not working. And this is where digital experience monitoring comes in. We monitor business-critical applications from the perspective of your users. So when your users complain, it's fairly easy to find what they're talking about in ThousandEyes and then do the troubleshooting. Before we were acquired by Cisco, we were known by our guerrilla marketing, especially by giving out these cool T-shirts. We've given out tons of T-shirts. By far, the most popular T-shirt in 10 years, basically, is "Go ahead, blame the network." A lot of people identify with that. I've also seen it in Slido, which is really good. Point being, whenever something goes wrong, people are like, oh, it's the network. It's the network, guys. If you work in networking, these things always come down to you. It's never the application, it's always the network. This is where ThousandEyes can help you, right? It can, well, first of all, if it is a network, it will tell you where it is. If it's not, it will help you build the proof that the problem is somewhere elsewhere. So this is just like, the problem landscape when you talk about a branch office. When a user that's working in your branch office complains about, let's say, WebEx is choppy, immediately you go through this mental checklist. Is it the enterprise LAN? Is it the upstream ISP? Maybe you're using Umbrella. Is it Umbrella? Is it SD-WAN? There are just so many components that could potentially go wrong for the user to have bad application experience, and you need to figure out what it is. Things got even worse now with COVID and this thing called the remote worker, which are users that complain just the same, even though you have very little control over their local environment. They have this strange ISP with some ISP router, which sometimes is dropping packets. And again, when they're complaining, you're like, oh, how do you, when a user that's working from home complains that WebEx is not working well, what do you do? There are so many different questions that come up, right? So this is where ThousandEyes comes in. ThousandEyes provides you digital experience monitoring. The end goal of ThousandEyes is that you have perhaps a dashboard like that. The dashboard that shows you all applications from all your users are working 100%. DNS works excellent. If you have Umbrella, Umbrella is 100% available. Everything is fine, except, oh, there's one red tile there. There seems to be some Umbrella issue, no, some Google issues through Umbrella in Ljubljana office. When that happens, ThousandEyes will allow you to troubleshoot it, and we'll take a look into that. So that's kind of the end goal. Always understand what's happening in your environment. Look at this guy. You can't see his face. You can't see his body, yet you kind of feel how confident he is. Like he's sitting like a king there. He has everything under control, and that's one thing I want you to take away today is digital experience monitoring puts you in control. You're not just deflecting all the accusations that are coming your way. No, you are in control of your network, of your environment. Whenever something comes in, you have the answers to those questions as accusations. One more thing I want you to know as well is this. Look at this guy. He's looking at some dashboards. He's getting some data. He's not a hospital manager looking at the monthly report. No, he is a surgeon that is trying to get actionable data just before the surgery so that he knows what he will operate on. And that's also what you want to get from your digital experience monitoring. It doesn't matter if you have a fancy dashboard, if the data you're getting is not actionable. The data you get from digital experience monitoring solutions should always be actionable. You should know what to do with it and how to solve the problem. Basically in a few steps, and we'll see that much better in the demo. When you see a red light somewhere, you click on the timeline, and you see there was an increase in the service response time, let's say from Ljubljana office to Office 365. You look at the another layer, you see there is actually increase in network latency. So it is a network issue. You look into another layer, and you see the path between Ljubljana office and Office 365. And what you see in the path is two things. The path is now actually going through some additional locations. So once you get in the Microsoft network, first, I hope that, yeah, it's good. So first you end up in Microsoft's network in Germany, but then you get routed to Paris and eventually to Spain. And there is some latency that's being induced there, and this is where the problem is. And now you know what's happening, you know how to deflect all the answers that you have. So let's talk about ThousandEyes use cases. I said, you should not really put ThousandEyes in a box because we can cover different environments, and you guys all have different network and other environments. But in general, you can put ThousandEyes use cases in kind of three baskets if you want. The first one is called the customer digital experience monitoring. We're talking about monitoring the quality a digital experience of your application. For instance, you are a bank, you have mobile application, web application, maybe you're an online retailer, and you care about how customers in your country, maybe globally, can access your service. And you want to deliver stellar digital experience to customers. So that's one basket of use cases that we have. The second basket of use cases that we have is workforce digital experience monitoring. What we're talking about here. So, for instance, you're a large enterprise, you have workers that use Office 365, they use WebEx, and they want to use those applications without any issues, regardless of where they are. They could be working from home, they could be working from the office. You want to ensure that those third-party services are actually working well, potentially even on your on-prem services. The last basket of use cases is enterprise digital experience monitoring. We're talking about infrastructure monitoring. You might have WAN connections, you might have SD-WAN connections, you might have connections between the data centers, and you want to understand how those connections behave, how your infrastructure behaves, and this is where you can use ThousandEyes as well. So I already explained all that's on this slide. This is just for your help if you'll be looking at the slides later on. Now, all those three baskets go together well with some other Cisco solutions, and it's quite possible that you'll find ThousandEyes as part of other Cisco solutions. When you use ThousandEyes together, when you use ThousandEyes customer digital experience monitoring together with AppDynamics, we have this thing called full stack observability. And actually, just today, we will actually announce a further better integration with AppDynamics. So stay tuned. This will be quite interesting. When we're talking about hybrid work, so now users are working from home, they're working from the office. This is where our workforce digital experience monitoring comes in. Part of that, we also have done the integration with WebEx Control Hub. So when you see one of your users has issues with WebEx calls, you can go from Control Hub directly into ThousandEyes and look through the data. The last thing is infrastructure monitoring. We are being part of Cisco's SaaS initiative. You will see you can install agents on different Cisco routers, switches, and so on. So how do we do it? How does ThousandEyes work at all? 90% of data that we get is by generating our own synthetic traffic. The way we do that is we deploy agents where your employees, customers are, and we use those agents to create tests against those business-critical applications. This is 90% of ThousandEyes. This is what we do on our cloud, enterprise, and endpoint agents. We'll talk about agents in just a minute. We also passively gather some data from the client. We do that with the endpoint agent, for instance, Wi-Fi data, Wi-Fi signal quality, CPU, etc. And we also passively gather some data from your network devices, potentially. This is what we do with the device layer functionality. It's not a big thing. It's just a nice kind of add-on. What we don't do is we don't do packet captures. We don't do flow monitoring. We don't listen to any traffic that you already have in your network. ThousandEyes is not doing any of that. OK, let's talk about the agents. Basically, we have 3 types of agents. First, we have cloud agents. Cloud agents come pre-installed in over 400 locations around the world, 240 cities, 63 countries. We take care for those cloud agents. We have them deployed at many broadband ISPs. We have them deployed at cloud provider, all the major cloud providers. We even have them in WebEx data centers. They are a really good fit for your CDX, so customer digital experience monitoring. You have a website that you want a lot of users to use, you will use our cloud agents. You can also use them for other use cases. For instance, if you have a VPN gateway, you can always monitor VPN gateway from the outside in to understand whether it's reachable and accessible. Second, we have the enterprise agents. Enterprise agents, technically speaking, are exactly the same as cloud agents. The licensing model is also the same. So when you purchase cloud and enterprise agent units, you can use those units on either cloud agents or enterprise agents. The difference is you now install those agents inside your offices. You can install it on Cisco devices. We support Catalyst 9,000 switches. We support Catalyst 8,000 routers. We support ISR 4K and so on. But if you don't have that, especially in the smaller offices, for instance, we unfortunately don't support ISR 1K. You can use other deployment options that we have. You can install it as a virtual machine, as a Docker container, as an Intel NAC appliance, and so on. There are other options as well. Point being, it doesn't matter how you deploy the agent or where you deploy the agent. You know, sometimes people ask me, hey, Primoz, to monitor SD-WAN, do you need to deploy agent on the SD-WAN router? No, you don't. You can install it as a Raspberry Pi next to it if you want, but it makes it much easier to just deploy it on the router because you already have it there. But it doesn't matter where or how you deploy it. The agent is just the source of active testing, active probing that goes across the network. OK, so it's, enterprise agents are ideal for the infrastructure, enterprise digital experience monitoring, because you can also use it to monitor how the packets are flowing from your office, let's say through Umbrella, to Office 365, or maybe between 2 of your offices through the SD-WAN, between 2 data centers, etc. The last type of an agent is a different type of an agent. It's called the endpoint agent. You install it on your users' computers. We support Windows and we support Mac. It also performs active application and network performance monitoring. So we also do synthetic tests. We also gather a lot of things passively. We can actually look at some of the website performance data from the browser. We can see the Wi-Fi signal strength, etc. So this is ideal for worker digital experience monitoring. It follows the worker wherever it goes. If worker is working from home, great. If it's moving to the office, you'll get some data as well. OK, enough talking. Let's see some ThousandEyes in action. First, we will talk about customer digital experience. And I will show you a demo of the customer digital experience. So this is actually exactly the same outage that we were discussing before, right? That was the outage that happened in Microsoft's network 2 weeks ago, but it is now seen through a much different view. Previously, we were talking about the Internet Insights. It was the aggregation of all the data. Everything was very, very high level, right? It's really good to just figure out quickly what's going on when there's a global outage. But if you use our cloud agents, you can get much better data than that against your application. So instead of Teams, I've selected this Teams example specifically because it's nice to see the same thing we've seen before, but in more details. But instead of Teams, you could be monitoring your website, your banking website, your mobile API, and you would get the same type of data, right? So what we're having here is the following. Look, we're doing an HTTP server test, which means we're doing some HTTP probing from cloud agents around the world. So down there, you have a map where you have multiple locations around the world. You can see we're doing some from San Francisco. I think that's Singapore, Sao Paulo. and so on. And we are probing this specific URL, https teamsmicrosoft.com. This is where Teams client connects once you start it up. And what you can see that, before the actual outage, we have this high-level metric called availability. Availability was pretty much 100%. From all locations around the world, things were working just fine. And then at 7:10 UTC, January 25th, you can see, first of all, availability started to drop significantly. When I click on that, you can see around the world from most of the agents except, what's that, is that Miami? Yeah, except from Miami, Microsoft Teams was not working anymore. You actually get some hints there. You see that purple bar here. This is some of the information that's being pulled from the Internet Insights. And we already told you here, oh, that was application outage in Microsoft Teams. We got that data from all other tests that we are running in ThousandEyes. So we're getting you some additional information. So at this point, you're like, OK, that surely seems like a Teams outage. It looks to be global. But you're not 100% sure at this point. Why? Look, you have many offices around the world. Maybe you're using something like SD-WAN, other technologies, maybe you're going through Umbrella. What if this is not actually a Teams problem, but it's an Umbrella problem? How do you know? Application is not reachable, but what is actually causing it? Some of the hints are already here on the left side. So first of all, in most cases, we could not even resolve the DNS name. That means the DNS servers were also down. But still, maybe you're using Umbrella, and maybe it's just Umbrella that's down, right? So there are some hints here, but you just don't know. So what we will do is we'll go down one layer into the network overview layer. What we do here is, at the same time when we're probing the HTTPS server, we're also probing the network itself. We're sending some TCP packets to port 443, and we're measuring things such as packet loss and latency. And what you see here is that during that outage, the average packet loss actually went up to 37.5%. And it was happening for most parts of the world. Miami was kind of excluded here. But if I just move forward in time, things change a little bit. Some locations had access, some didn't. And you can see that. So it was definitely a network issue. I can also see things such as latency. Yes, latency has also increased, although this is really not such a huge increase that would cause those issues. But packet loss is definitely where the problem was. At this point in time, we still don't know where it was happening, right? Maybe, again, if we're using Umbrella, maybe it's Umbrella. Maybe we just made a real weird configuration on our routers all across our global network. So to pinpoint where the issue is, I will go down to the path visualization. Path visualization is, you can imagine, it's kind of an advanced trace route. We do trace route with different types of packets, usually something like, in this case, we're using TCP 443. To get this, it looks like very, very complicated schema. It's very complicated because currently I have on the screen some, 15 agents. I can actually filter that out a little bit. For instance, I can just say, let's focus on Sao Paulo, Brazil. This is what I'm interested in. It will narrow things down a little bit. Point being, on the left side, we have our agents. We have our agents in. They could be in our offices or somewhere else. And those agents are testing the Microsoft Teams solution here on the right side. And those are the network paths between them and Microsoft. So for instance, if we go from Sao Paulo is connected to this upstream provider, which is TL Group. And then TL Group is actually peering with level 3 communications in Sao Paulo. And then level 3 is probably at some point, so we're still, so level 3 is actually peering with Microsoft in Sao Paulo itself. And then eventually this traffic ends up, this is still Sao Paulo, let's see. This traffic eventually ends up, well, in Sao Paulo's, looks like Microsoft actually has a data center Azure location in Sao Paulo in Brazil as well. So this is what's happening. But if you scroll up and down, all of a sudden, you see a bunch of red nodes here, right? We have one here. It says, in the Microsoft network, we have, 100% packet loss in this case. What about this one here? It says, well, Okay, so Microsoft Corporation location in Cleveland, Ohio, 72% packet loss, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a bunch of red nodes, and they're all in the Microsoft network. Now, this looks very complicated. If I just move back in time, the network was kind of much more simple before. Well, there was still some packet loss here, but most of the locations are connecting to Microsoft just fine. Look at this one, Canada, almost direct connectivity to Microsoft. So this is kind of a ThousandEyes in the gist. This could be your banking application, your retail application, instead of Microsoft Teams. And you could use us to just figure out whether your application is down, whether there's a network issue, or maybe there's just some ISP in a certain country in Europe that has issues. Users there are complaining, but of course there's nothing you can do about that. OK. So much about customer digital experience. So I already mentioned cloud agents. I won't go into any details here. This slide is just for your reference. Let's go to the workforce digital experience. Workforce digital experience, remember, it's all about the employees in your enterprise who could be working from anywhere. They might be working from home. They might be working from your office. So let's look at the demo here. So what we have now is a very similar view, but it's also different, because now we are looking at the data that we are gathering with the endpoint agent that is being installed on your users' computers. What we have here is the endpoint agent that is actually installed on one of my colleagues' computers, Tim Hale. He's based in the UK. And what's happening here is we've decided that we want to monitor his experience with ThousandEyes application, because he's our TSA. He works with ThousandEyes every day. He needs to have good access to it. And you can see Tim, so the first thing you notice here is that the line chart looks a little bit choppy, which makes sense, because now we're not testing something from cloud agents that are running all the time. We're testing something from the endpoint agent, and we only see things when Tim is actually using his computer. So here and there, a couple of times a day, Tim actually accesses ThousandEyes application, and usually his experience score is pretty good. Right here, it's around 93%. It's all green. Experience score basically means we kind of calculate a bunch of different metrics we put together to understand how quickly the websites we want to monitor load up in his browser. And you can see around 10 o'clock, Tim started to have some issues. The experience score went down to 17%. The application started to be very slow. And we can actually go into some details here. We can see, yeah, he was visiting app.thousandeyes.com. This is what we care about. He visited 2 pages. And actually, his average content time, so time to present the whole content on the ThousandEyes application, is 15 seconds, which is way too much. We can even go into some details. Now, this is a quick overview. We can actually see the Wi-Fi quality of his Wi-Fi connection at that point. There is the first hint here. We are also testing the network between him and just his local gateway, his local router. He's working from home, and you can see latency is almost 1 second. So we almost, uncovered what the issue is. But still, let's go step by step. Let's look into the waterfall. Oh, it's not available for this specific page. It looks like it hasn't opened at all. So let's look at something else, maybe this one. We can look into the waterfall, and we can see things such as, when he was opening app.thousandeyes.com, actually, first he was waiting for 10 seconds to just get the response from the web server, and then he was waiting 10 seconds to get the full initial HTML reply. So 20 seconds in total, which is obviously totally unacceptable. So what does Tim do at this point? Of course, he starts to complain, right? He calls our IT help desk. He's like, hey, guys, I can't work with ThousandEyes if the application doesn't work. So what our IT help desk can do, they can open up ThousandEyes, and they can say, OK, look, we see your experience score is pretty low. We understand you have issues. That's fine. Let's try to figure out what it is. We'll go down to the network layer. So this is very similar to what we were doing before. And we'll look at packet loss. So this is end-to-end packet loss between Tim and ThousandEyes application. And you can see, yes, packet loss actually went up to, at some point, to 90%. Of course, things are not working as expected. Now, down here, you see the same path visualization that you've seen before. By default, it's a little bit aggregated. You don't see every specific node. It's kind of aggregated by different networks and locations. But you can always click here and just expand that into the actual nodes with the IP addresses. So what's happening here is you can see Tim actually is working from home. He's connected to his Wi-Fi. And let's check the Wi-Fi signal strength again. 96%, which is perfect. Link speed, 54 megabits per second. Couldn't be better. Well, Tim could buy a new router, but it's pretty good, right? What's happening here is this. Up to his default gateway, 190 millisecond delay, and then additional delay up to BT router, which is his provider. And of course, there's also packet loss here. What's happening is Tim obviously has some local network connectivity issues, and we can even go here into the local networks and look at data such as, what we're also doing here is we're just trying to establish whether there's some, this is now for everyone, so let's find Tim. So what's happening here is, where are you, Tim? Yeah, the Oxford side. So what's actually happening here is Tim is having high latency, high packet loss towards his default gateway, his home router, while at the same time his Wi-Fi signal is absolutely fine. The signal quality is great. There are no interruptions there. So what do we do at this point? Well, we call Tim and say, look, Tim, we're very sorry, but you should probably change your router, maybe check with your kids if they're downloading something or something like that, right? And at that point, at least, again, you have this proof that, look, Tim, stop complaining. Fix your problem yourself. There's nothing we can do for you at this point. Okay, so much about workforce digital experience. Some of that I've already said about the endpoint agent. We can also, I haven't shown that in the demo, but endpoint agent also detects your VPNs if you have one established, such as AnyConnect. We monitor your connectivity to the VPN gateway. We can detect proxies. We can monitor your connectivity to proxy if it's in use, etc. If you're connecting to Umbrella, we can detect all that and show you all these metrics separately. So for instance, if you are using AnyConnect to go to your data center, we can also say, oh, it's Tim's problem because he has bad internet connectivity, or maybe it's something in our data center, et cetera, et cetera. The best thing about the endpoint agent is it follows the employee wherever he works from home, from office, from anywhere. Probably the biggest disadvantage is that when Tim stops working, he closes the laptop, we don't have any data anymore. That's why the enterprise agent is still my favorite when it comes to the office. You have this constant baseline of what's actually going on. Okay. Enterprise digital experience. Let's do a demo again. So what we are looking for now is we care deeply about Office 365 performance. All our employees use Office 365. So we really want to ensure that it's working as expected. So we're monitoring Office 365 from a bunch of different locations around the world once again. And what we're doing on a very high level here, we're actually monitoring the page load time. All our enterprise agents and cloud agents have this component called the browser bot. It's a full-fledged browser that can open up websites. You've seen some of that before in the waterfall that I've shown you. But what's happening here is, so we're loading up portaloffice.com, and in the average from the whole world, it usually takes just a little bit under a second. And then suddenly some interesting things start to happen here. You don't see an increase in page load time, but actually what's happening is a bunch of agents are now dropping, are not completing the page load at all. And if you look at the map, you can see there are some agents in Europe, and there are some agents in South Africa. So if I move left and right through the timeline, things will change a little bit, but it's always, the agents that are affected are always Europe, Middle East, South Africa. Israel is fine, and the rest of the countries are fine as well. So this is an interesting outage, right? At this point, it's not as clear as it was before. It's not like, oh, Microsoft is having a global outage. No, 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 no. This is just happening in Europe and part of Middle East and Africa. It's not happening in Israel. What is it? Maybe this time it is actually our enterprise network, right? We just don't know. Once again, we can actually go here and look at the table and see, who the offenders are. So we have Paris, Milan, and Johannesburg, and I can actually click on Johannesburg and drill down into that waterfall that I was showing you before. And basically what I see is like, now, just, things just never loaded. There's a lot of issues. Sometimes, under normal conditions, this should really, even from Johannesburg, this should only take about 2 to 3 seconds. But here we have a lot of gaps. So the question is, what is causing that? Is it a network issue, application issue? What kind of issue is it? Some hints are once again hidden in here. And you can see, some agents had issues in just establishing the TCP session with the server. Some agents have trouble establishing the SSL session, and some agents actually establish all of that. They send the request, but they never receive the right response. Now, just looking like from far, I would say this looks like a network issue for sure, because otherwise, at least the connectivity phases would usually go through without a problem. But let's go down to the network overview again. So I go to the network overview, and I immediately spot there is packet loss going on, actually quite a lot of packet loss. And if I look at which agents are being offended, so here we have huge packet loss from Europe. If I just move back and forth in time a little bit, now South Africa is also there, even 100% loss, and so on. So basically, when I move through the timeline, I see all these same agents I was mentioning affected. So it is a network issue once again. It always feels like it's always a network issue based on the examples I've chosen today, which is not always true. So let's go down to path visualization and try to understand what's going on, where the things are actually happening. Most of those paths look pretty good, especially like here. So the first one is from Beijing, China, and just give it a moment. The internet is not the fastest here. If only we would have a tool to diagnose it, right? Yeah, OK. So what we have here is, from most of the locations, things are working just fine. Let's say here from Beijing, China, there is this provider that's being used, and then it's CNC group, whatever that is, still the same provider, and then at some point, it is peering with China Unicom, and then China Unicom goes to Hong Kong, and then in Hong Kong, it actually peers with Microsoft's network in Hong Kong. And then eventually, it ends up, let's see, in Microsoft data center in Tokyo. So if you go from China to Office 365, from this location, at least you end up in Tokyo. And everything's fine here, no red things. There are some red lines here, which is just increased latency. But if you go down, for instance, Johannesburg, South Africa, now we see a red circle there. Let's look at it, what it is. It says 94% packet loss in the Microsoft's network in Paris, France. Any other offenders that we have? Yeah, so we have London, England. Nothing obvious here. But if I move just back and forth in time, the one thing you will notice is that it's always a red node like here. OK, from London, England, we actually get to Microsoft's corporation network in London, and then all the packets are being dropped. And what do we have here? If we go from Johannesburg, we end up in Paris, France, and again, all the packets are being dropped. And down here, I think we have Dubai. We end up in Amsterdam, once again, with 100% packet loss. So at this point, what we can do, issue in the Microsoft network, nothing we need to fix, but we have this decisive answer of what is actually causing the issue. It's an interesting geographic problem. It looks like, so all the issues were in the European data centers. It looks like Microsoft had some network issues in the European data centers. OK, I said you can install Enterprise Agent on various different devices. the exact support matrix is on our website. It doesn't matter how or where you deploy. Deploy it on what you have, on what is easy to deploy. For instance, for enterprise monitoring, a lot of people like to deploy it on Cisco devices. For customer digital experience, a lot of teams like to deploy it in things such as Docker containers, etc. One advantage of the enterprise agent that I haven't really shown you today, but I think it's really important to mention, is it can perform complex web application tests. It can perform user journeys. You can create scripts that do something like they go to your retail shop website, they search for a certain item, and then they click and put it in a basket. And you can measure how long it takes, and if it takes too long, you can figure out what it is. And that's kind of, let's say, the first part of the FSO as well, if you want. If your database is not behaving well, ThousandEyes will figure that out through the web transaction test, because it will take way too long to complete that user journey. In your enterprise environment, it's kind of cool because it can also test your VPN and SD-WAN underlay. If you're interested more, especially how to monitor your SaaS environment with ThousandEyes, I have another session tomorrow, which is really ThousandEyes in the SaaS environment, and I'll go into some more technical details here. What's really important is it provides constant baseline, 24/7. When things go wrong, users complain, you look into the data, you're like, oh, page load takes 10 seconds. Is that normal? Is that too much? How long does it usually take? With Enterprise Agent, you always have this baseline. You can look at the data, just as we've done here. Let's go 1-2 hours back when things were normal, and let's see what was actually happening then. That gives us all the data that we need to figure out where the issue is now and whether the data we're getting is abnormal or not. There is this functionality I really want to mention here called the WAN Insights. It is a functionality that we have announced on last year's Cisco Live as a preview for some of the customers, private preview. We are announcing that WAN Insights functionality is becoming GA on this Cisco Live. It will become GA in the middle of the next month. It is a slightly different product from what we've seen now. It applies statistical models to Cisco vAnalytics to figure out which network paths in your SD-WAN network are behaving suboptimal, and they can even predict where you will have problems in the future. For instance, if we detect that from a certain location using one ISP, you always have larger latency every Monday between 3 and 5 o'clock, we can actually say, look, this is happening every week. It will be happening in the future as well. And we give you some ideas on how to change that, how to change some policies to do that. We'll have a good announcement probably today or tomorrow, so watch for that. It's very interesting. It doesn't require any licenses. If you have the right SD-WAN license, if you have vAnalytics, you can use WAN Insights free of charge, and you can already give it a go. Well, not already. So next month, middle of next month, it will be available for everyone. OK. That was ThousandEyes 101. Those are the basics of ThousandEyes. If you're like, hey, pretty much I want more, I have one more slide for you guys. 2 more slides. Internet Insights. I actually started today with Internet Insights demo. What is Internet Insights? It's our collective intelligence product. It gathers data from all the tests that we do, from all the customers that we have, and it gives you information about public transit networks, about public SaaS applications, and whether there are any outages. You've seen the demo. The point here is it eliminates unnecessary troubleshooting cycles. You open up Internet Insights, you see Teams or all Microsoft services are globally unavailable. You're done. You don't need to go through any other troubleshooting steps. Device layer, I mentioned it in the beginning. I said we are also passively collecting some data from your network devices. That is called device layer. We use good old SNMP. And honestly, we're not really collecting any data that you might not get through other SNMP tools. The advantage of using it is, it's also free of charge, by the way, is that when you look at that path visualization, and when the first 2 or 3 hops are in your enterprise network, And when you see there's some latency or packet loss in your enterprise network, on the path visualization, those are all layer 3 nodes. It's packet loss between 2 layer 3 devices. But in between, you might have a number of different switches. You might have some load balancers, whatever. Device layer allows you to peek into that as well, get layer 2 visibility inside your enterprise network. OK. You've seen this slide, but I'm just putting it on once more because that's what I want you to remember today. Digital experience monitoring puts you in control. That's why I want to have it. You will deflect all the requests and accusations that come in. It will help you troubleshoot the issues that you have. Really quick recap, and then we can go to QA. So, customer digital experience. You're an online service provider, a bank, something like that. Use our cloud agents. Workforce digital experience. You're a large enterprise. You care how your workforce is accessing business-critical applications. Usually, we solve that with the endpoint agent. And then enterprise digital experience management. You care about your enterprise network, about your WAN connectivity, inter-data center connectivity, SD-WAN, umbrella, and you will use enterprise agent for that. OK, just before we go to QA session, what I like to do is I would just like to repeat what we did at the beginning. Hopefully that will work. Maybe not. Slider decided not to cooperate. Oh, it says disconnected. OK, we're trying to get this back up. Let's do some Q&A. Anyone here has any questions? Excellent. Gentlemen there, can we give, yes, you'll get a microphone in a moment.
Thanks. Very short question. How many agent license did you use for the Microsoft demo?
So how many? Sorry, can you repeat that?
License, agent, for the agents did you use?
For the first one, or?
Yes, for the first one, for the Microsoft.
The Internet Insights, or?
Yes.
So Internet Insights licenses come basically, there's a matrix. You have to decide how many regions you want to cover and how many services. I don't know. So I can't really say how many licenses you need to get that view, because that's from our internal account. We had all the licenses. But it would be probably a couple of licenses to cover all the regions, but it's a single application bucket. So a couple of licenses. I would need to check specifically for the exact number. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions that we have?
About the device license, you say it's free of charge, but free of charge if you have the basic license for other things, or it's we can have this one only?
That's a good question. Probably. Well, so here's the thing. No, you cannot just get ThousandEyes license and just use device layer. And I'll be honest, that would not make much sense. Again, it's S&P monitoring. You have a bunch of applications to do that. The advantage of having that in ThousandEyes is to have this data available in one application and kind of merge the data from other sources as well. There are some ways of how you can get free ThousandEyes if you want. If you guys have purchased Catalyst 9300 switches with advanced and premier licenses, you got some ThousandEyes units. And you can just open your ThousandEyes account. If you don't know how to talk with your Cisco representative, you can get access to ThousandEyes. If you have SD-WAN and if you have vAnalytics, starting next month, you can get access to WAN Insights for free, and you can use device layer as well. So there are some options. Just using device layer without anything else, honestly, even technically doesn't make a lot of sense. Guys, just use Slido while we're doing the Q&A. I just want to see if your perspective of ThousandEyes has changed after this hour. Do you have any other questions?
OK, still as regards licensing, do you advise you install the endpoint licenses on all user clients across the organization?
So the endpoint licensing, the way it works is you purchase a certain number of licenses. It is one license per the endpoint, active endpoint agent. For instance, you can purchase 100 endpoint agent licenses. You can actually install the endpoint agent on 1,000 computers. But 900 of those will be disabled in ThousandEyes. There is some flexibility there. You can decide that some users are not important to you anymore, and you can disable those licenses. And with a little bit of delay, you can re-enable those licenses on other agents. So you can have agents installed on all your users, but not use all of them. And you can then transfer licenses. Cloud and enterprise agents use unit licensing. It is per usage, per test usage, but it's a similar flexible model. So you can just do with those units whatever you want. OK, we're getting out of time. OK. Looks a little bit different now. It's monitoring, it's useful. Excellent, I really like that, it's useful. Digital experience, visibility, and root cause. It's expensive, OK. Well, we haven't talked about that yet. Complicated, no, it's not complicated. It's not complicated. Anyway, cool. Thank you everyone for coming. I hope you learned something cool about ThousandEyes, and enjoy your Cisco Live Week.